Well, we're 2 weeks away from the start of 49ers training camp. Just 2 weeks. It's unbelievable. This offseason, on one hand, it seems that it's taken forever. On the other hand, it seems like it's gone by with a blur. Either way, we're 2 weeks away, and I'm sure these last 2 weeks are going to go by quickly as well. They say that the days and the hours go by slow, but the years go by fast. Well, the year 2022 has certainly gone by fast as we now sit in the middle of July, and July 26th is when the 49ers report to training camp. So take a look at my screen right here. This is what I got ready for you guys up on The Athletic. From Jimmy Garoppolo to Trey Lance to Deebo Samuel, resetting the 49ers offseason. It's a 2,000-word piece that goes through the whole narrative, the history, whatever you want to call it, of the 49ers offseason month by month. It's a great reason for you to subscribe to The Athletic as we get ramped back up, because we're going to be previewing all the position groups. We're going to be going into the 49ers in a level of depth that you won't see anywhere else, both on this YouTube channel and obviously on The Athletic. So if you go ahead and check out the comment section there, I've already added the link to the article. It's right there. So check it out in the comment section. I don't think you can click on the screen, but through the comment section, you can click. I'm going to put it into the comment section of the article afterwards, which is not the chat section. I guess I got to differentiate between chat and comment section. Things are just really complicated in that regard. So be sure to check out the article that's on the screen right now. The link is right beneath me. I'll take it off there so it's not in the way. And I'm going to talk about it a little bit, because I think when you have an offseason that is as eventful as the 49ers offseason, they were in the news constantly throughout all these months. It's been, 5 or 6 months. When that happens, sometimes, you don't appreciate all that's happened unless you package it all together and look at it as one big summary. So that's what I sought to do, because, there were months where we got stuck in Deebo Samuel drama. There were months that we got stuck in Jimmy Garoppolo drama. Most recently, we've gotten stuck in Trey Lance drama, which is just a whole other level of stupid out there, right? Because he hasn't even been practicing and people are trying to talk about arm endurance or whatever it is. But anyway, we get zeroed in on the tree instead of seeing the forest. And my goal is to take a drone and have that drone fly upward and take a look at the whole forest so we can picture everything and not just the one piece little bark on one tree. We have to see things for the big picture. And that's why I wrote this piece. So from Garoppolo to Lance to Deebo Samuel, resetting the 49ers offseason. Subscribe now to The Athletic and to this channel, and we're going to go through this one by one, a month by month in this video. So I have to take a look here to see what text titles I've prepared. There we go. We're going to start with February. Now, keep in mind that the 49ers played until late January last season. January 30th was the date of the NFC Championship game, the loss to the Rams. Not only did the 49ers play until Jan 30th, which is my dad's birthday, shout out to Alan, they also played 20 games, which matched the franchise record on the entire season between regular season and playoffs. And they also set an NFL record by playing 12 road games. And yes, I'm counting the games at SoFi Stadium as road games. They still had to travel. They still had to stay in a hotel. They still had to do all that stuff. It was 80% 49ers fans for some of those. But for those, that NFC Championship game at SoFi, we have to count it as the NFL record 12th road game of the season. The point is that the 49ers went through a marathon last season, and they had to sprint it. You don't normally sprint a marathon, right? You normally pace yourself. Maybe for the final, 100 meters, you put everything you have to go and finish at that line. Maybe you can go into a little bit of a sprint mode if you're in some kind of shape. But in general, you're pacing to 26.2 miles. So the 49ers ran a marathon with 12 road games last year, 20 total games. But they absolutely had to sprint for more than a month to finish this, because they had 4 straight elimination games at the end of the whole journey. In fact, if you look in retrospect, that Texas game, the game against the Texans before the finale against the Rams in the regular season, they also had to win that. It wasn't technically an elimination game at the time, so I won't count it as such. But they had to win that with Lance. Then Garoppolo came back. They had to beat the Rams in the regular season finale. Then they had to go to Dallas and beat the Cowboys in the wild card round. Then they had to go into the freezing cold in Green Bay and beat the Packers. And then finally, they faced the Rams again, and they lost by 3 points in the NFC Championship game. So this marathon, which ended in a sprint, was absolutely exhausting, and it took the 49ers all the way to the doorstep of February, right? So they finish up on January 30th. They enter February. What does Kyle Shanahan say? He says, I can't wait to have a break. Finally. I mean, it's been a long few years for the 49ers, from the Super Bowl run through COVID, which, everybody had time to sit at home, but nobody really rested just because it was no fun, right? While everybody was sitting there at home. 2020 was no fun for the 49ers. And then through 2021, this marathon, they started 3-5. They had to dig themselves out of a hole. It just illustrates the importance of getting a bye week. And you don't want to start 3-5 to get a bye week. So the 49ers dug their own graves in a way. It's no surprise that they ran out of steam in the fourth quarter against the Rams because, well, they played 4 straight elimination games on the road. The Rams were a little bit more fresh. The Rams didn't have that difficult of a journey to get to that fourth quarter, and the 49ers just didn't have enough. But anyway, I digress. Kyle Shanahan needed a rest after how exhausting this all was. And he said that, he's going to kick back, probably go to Cabo, probably do nothing for a while in February. But the problem was that he lost assistant coaches, and he started losing a lot of them in early February. Mike McDaniel obviously took the head coaching job with the Miami Dolphins, but then the 49ers didn't renew John Embry's contract. He's now with Miami. Wes Welker, receivers coach, followed Mike McDaniel to Miami. You had other departures across the roster, 7 total assistants left. 49ers also didn't renew the contract for Richard Hightower, their special teams coordinator. He was replaced by Brian Schneider, formerly of the Seahawks. It all meant a very busy February for the 49ers. And I think that it ended up being an intriguing February, but I mean, I could speak selfishly. I didn't get a chance to rest either. Normally you think you could, kind of pick up the pieces after the season, maybe write a couple nice big recap pieces. I did anyway. We did videos and all that stuff anyway, but we got to get right into coach hiring mode, right? We had to talk about Anthony Lynn coming aboard, former Chargers head coach, run games, schematic mastermind for a lot of the inside zone power stuff is going to diversify the 49ers run game. We talked about Leonard Hankerson moving up to receivers coach for the 49ers. He's a former Shanahan player drafted by Washington back in the lockout year in 2011. We talked about Brian Fleury being the guy who's coached essentially everything but tight ends, but is now the 49ers tight ends coach. I wrote a big article on Brian Fleury. Actually, that's one that I should probably pop up onto the screen. I think that we should go through, make this a nice, robust video, and just kind of talk about all of these phases of the 49ers offseason. This is my piece on Brian Fleury. This is Brian Fleury with Mike McDaniel. Fleury on the left, McDaniel on the right. Fleury is emblematic of the huge staff turnover that the 49ers saw in February. He was promoted. He was already on the 49ers staff, quality control guy for 2 years. Now he's the head tight ends coach, replaces John Embry. But, the 49ers are thinking about this from an outside-the-box perspective. You look at the standard way of doing things. They would have just thrown another tight end experienced coach in there, right? Somebody who had already done that job. Maybe find somebody at the college ranks. I don't know. But the 49ers instead went to a guy in Brian Fleury who's a former college quarterback, who's coached linebackers, outside, inside linebackers, you name it, who's been on the defensive side of the ball as far as coaching in the NFL, much more than he's been on the offensive side of the ball. And who finally saw, his cup of coffee coaching the offense as a quality control guy for the 49ers in the past 2 years. That's Fleury on the left. So why do the 49ers have this setup? Why is Fleury suddenly coaching the tight ends? Well, it's because Shanahan is looking for a new level of precision from his offense to surround Trey Lance, to make things easier for Trey Lance. So if tight ends are running pass routes and they make their break, they make some kind of cut half yard earlier, half yard later than it's supposed to be, according to the playbook, that's going to throw off the timing of the short game for the 49ers. And Shanahan doesn't want that. And he knows Fleury is one of the most detail-oriented members of his coaching staff. Brian Fleury, the former quarterback, right? So he knows exactly where receivers are supposed to be, or else it hurts the quarterback. He knows how much that can inconvenience the quarterback. He knows, having coached linebackers, what's best for tight ends, where those routes are supposed to go so that you can get open working against linebackers in coverage. So Shanahan's coming at this from a different angle. The standard tight end angle worked well for the 49ers for a few years. John Embry was the guy that, really embedded the yards after the catch mentality into George Kittle. He'd fine him $10 every time that he ran out of bounds. But now the 49ers wanted more precision and route running from their tight ends. And hence, it goes to Brian Fleury. That is a great example of the new way that the 49ers tried to reconstruct their staff ahead of Trey Lance taking over as the quarterback here in the 2022 season. Leonard Hankerson, also technician. Again, a guy that played under Shanahan in Washington, so he's going to know those ins and outs really well, maybe even better than Wes Welker as far as the playbook goes. And Anthony Lynn, power running back, back in the day, he played for the 49ers in 95 and 96, but the power run game has been Lynn's schematic specialty. And they had to go out and find a way to complement Trey Lance on the ground while replacing Mike McDaniel, who was the run game mastermind for the 49ers over the past several seasons. McDaniel's now taken his speed-based approach to Miami, and the 49ers now have the power-based guy, Anthony Lynn, who specializes with that, helping coordinate their run game. So I think it's a fascinating shift, since you've also seen the personnel for the 49ers on the ground change, right? They're at 220 plus pounds now with Ty Davis-Price, with Jordan Mason, undrafted free agent out of Georgia Tech. Even Elijah Mitchell, Jeff Wilson, those guys are bigger than, the Matt Breidas of the world, who were the pure outside zone runners for Shanahan and McDaniel in the past. So the coaching staff, that February turnover, even though a lot of Deebo drama came after that, even though so much happened with Jimmy Garoppolo or didn't happen with Jimmy Garoppolo, and noise about Trey Lance and the draft and free agency, salary cap stuff, all of this was a flurry this offseason. But the fact that the 49ers installed this new coaching staff, I haven't even talked about Brian Griese, who doesn't have any coaching experience, also coming in to that job with a fresh new perspective. I'm not saying this is going to work or it's not going to work. I'm just saying that the fact that the 49ers made such a radical overhaul of their offensive staff, where they had to replace every single position coach except for the O-line coach, Chris Foerster, the fact they got that done in February should not be forgotten. That was a huge part of this offseason, and it's going to be fascinating to see how it translates to the field come September 11th, I think, is the season opener against the Chicago Bears. I just realized the other day, Margot, my fiance, asked me, why are the, baseball players in Chicago, the baseball team, why is the baseball team called the Cubs, which is like a baby bear, and why is the football team called the Bears? Is there any relation between those two? And I told her, I don't think so. I know they're both like super old franchises, but it's probably something I should know. Instead, I'm going to ask the readers. Cubs and the Bears in the same city. And it just so happens that both of the SF sports teams, right, the Giants and the 49ers, are going to be in Chicago on the same weekend. Giants get to play the Cubs, and the 49ers get to take on the Bears in week 1 on Sunday. All right. Any questions about February? Then I'm going to move on to March. We're going to make this one fun. The show's going to go in depth on everything. That just shows more of Shanahan's control freak personality and making sure no one goes away from his way. I don't even know where to start with this. I mean, every coach is going to want to bring aboard a staff that he thinks delivers the most efficient way of augmenting whatever the head coach does. And Kyle Shanahan even brought in another former head coach. If Kyle Shanahan were so intent on being a control freak, he'd bring in a lot of graduate assistants from college programs who have next to no experience at the NFL level, and he'd boss them around all day. He wouldn't bring in a former NFL head coach in Anthony Lynn. So I don't think that this kind of charge holds much weight. Kyle Shanahan is the leader. He's supposed to be the boss. He's supposed to be in control. If he's not in control, then he's a weak head coach. But he's supposed to be in control in as such that he allows creativity to thrive under him. And there's a reason why Mike McDaniel has gotten hired away. Robert Saleh got hired away as head coach. LaFleur left to the Jets. He got a promotion, offensive coordinator under Robert Saleh. The 49ers seem to really be a good place for coaching staff members to advance their careers. And if Kyle Shanahan was a control freak who didn't allow development underneath him, I don't think that would be the case. In fact, to fully rebut this point, let's go down to the final quote from Brian Fleury. This is Brian Fleury on coaching under Kyle Shanahan. It's fun for a coach, for sure. One of the great things about our staff is we all have big picture mentalities, and we want to know the whole offense like Kyle does. I'm sure there's more than a few aspiring coordinators on the staff, so we're kind of training ourselves in that regard. That's where some of the versatility comes in. I want to know what the running backs are doing, what the fullbacks are doing, not just the tight ends. I think the same is true of everyone else. It creates a really fun, creative environment as a result because you know you have access to a lot of people that know all the different pieces. Some control freak Kyle Shanahan is, to have a guy lauding the really fun, creative environment that he's created on the team. And if you're going to say, oh, well, anybody would say that because Kyle's his boss. Well, look at the promotions that Kyle has earned the 49ers staff. Look at the fact that guys have graduated like Mike McDaniel to other positions. And then tell me that Kyle Shanahan is too much of a control freak. I just don't think that the facts add up for that kind of take. Split inside zone is Anthony Lynn's bread and butter. Yes. And that might be Trey Sermon's bread and butter. It's significant to me that Anthony Lynn has a different background than Bobby Turner, longtime Broncos running backs coach, under Mike Shanahan, who really was one of the pioneers of that outside zone approach for his running backs. Anthony Lynn is going to be different. And the 49ers running backs look different. Their offensive line looks a little bit different. Aaron Banks is going to be the biggest guard that the 49ers have had under Kyle Shanahan. So all of this to me is emblematic of a shift for the 49ers as they move forward. 1 second, guys. I am going to quickly close the door to the room. All right, and I am back, as you'll see right now. Pop it back open on the screen. Fiance is about to be back here in a few minutes, so wanted to keep the audio coming in from the outside to a minimum. All right, everybody just coming in, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you guys have any questions about the February 49ers flurry, then please let me know. It was huge staff turnover in February. Those of you just coming in, by the way, this is the article that I'm talking about. I recap the entire 49ers offseason month by month. I'm going to go ahead and put that link into the comment section one more time. There you guys go. So be sure to check that out. You might still be able to get The Athletic for only $1 a month. So Mr. Corey says, DeMeco Ryans is the next head coach in training from the 49ers. And thank God Chris Kasarik is happy as a D-line coach only. Yeah, Chris Kasarik is a D-line coach. He loves it. That's his bread and butter. He should be the highest paid guy in the league at that position as far as I'm concerned. And yes, DeMeco Ryans is next. And hey, this goes back to Bill Walsh. Bill Walsh, I mean, was Bill Walsh a control freak? I mean, you probably could say that if you wanted to say that, right? Bill Walsh was in charge, but control freak is a pejorative term. It's a negative term. So these people that go out and say, call Kyle Shanahan a control freak, I think they're, trying to imply that he's got some kind of problem in a negative light. Bill Walsh and Kyle Shanahan are both very particular offensive minds. And both of them have really tried hard. And this is where Kyle takes a page from Bill's book. They've tried really hard to set up a creative environment in which young assistants can learn and young assistants can earn promotions to graduate to the next level. What's wrong with that? I don't think anything's wrong with that. So you got McDaniel, you got Saleh, obviously LaFleur got a promotion. Other guys have gotten promotions too. I could go down the whole list right now, but I think the next big head coaching promotion is going to come from DeMeco Ryans. If he puts together another year like the one that he had last season, calling the 49ers defense, making some awesome adjustments. The best one probably came against the Green Bay Packers in the divisional playoffs, started double covering Davante Adams in a way that totally shut Davante Adams down after a fairly productive first quarter. Well, DeMeco Ryans is going to be a head coach really soon. All right, let's move on to the next month. That was February. 49ers took care of huge staff turnover in February. Then we move on to March. The surgery twist happened in March. Man, we're already at 20 minutes and we're only on March. This is going to be quite the show. It's going to be a lot of fun. So Jimmy Garoppolo holds a press conference the day after the regular or the season ends for the 49ers. The day after they lost that NFC Championship game to the Rams, Jimmy Garoppolo does a press conference via Zoom. He is very emotional. He says goodbye to the media, to the fans. Jimmy Garoppolo knows what's up. The 49ers know what's up. In fact, I mean, the only reason that was surprising to some is because they hadn't been paying attention. The 49ers plan was simple. I've been trying to yell it from the rooftop through this YouTube channel, through my articles on The Athletic, through Twitter, wherever you follow me, for months. And it was that the 49ers wanted Jimmy Garoppolo to start in 2021 while Trey Lance learned. And then they wanted to give Trey Lance the keys in 2022 and beyond. That still remains the 49ers' preferred path. So let's just simplify all of this before we talk about the surgery. The 49ers wanted to trade Jimmy Garoppolo when they could over the course of this offseason to open up cap space, get some capital back, clear the path for Trey Lance. Jimmy Garoppolo also wanted to move on because he was no longer the favored man in San Francisco. So it made sense for all parties to move on after they had announced their intentions with the drafting of Trey Lance and the plan for 2021, which was Garoppolo starting and Lance backing up. So any conspiracy theory that branches out from what I think was a really simple situation, to me is just ridiculous. You had the 49ers wanting to trade Garoppolo wanting to play somewhere else, and Garoppolo at the same time coming off a postseason in which he was playing hurt. First, he hurt the thumb, the finger, whatever it was against Tennessee. And then in trying to brace himself without using that hand on a fall and a hit against the Dallas Cowboys in the wild card round, Garoppolo hurt the right throwing shoulder. So in a lot of ways, the 49ers locker room really thank Garoppolo for gutting through the Green Bay Packers game the next week. The 49ers were able to win at Lambeau Field and for, almost finishing the job in the NFC and giving the 49ers a nice lead in the NFC championship that they couldn't hold. But unfortunately for the 49ers, they lost that game by 3 points, and he was sitting there the next day giving a farewell press conference. Over the course of the next month after that press conference, Jimmy Garoppolo tried to rehabilitate the shoulder without surgery. He knew that if he had surgery, it would be a lot tougher to get traded, and he wants to go to another team because he wants to be the guy that team wants. But the shoulder rehab, at least according to Jimmy Garoppolo and his team of doctors, wasn't taking. It wasn't yielding the results that the 49ers wanted over the course of that month. So on March 1st, the first day of the NFL Combine, Jimmy Garoppolo's team comes out and says, we are going to undergo surgery because the rehab hasn't been working. We would rather do surgery sooner rather than later, because this surgery is going to mean that he can't throw until July, until right about now, right? So because he can't throw until July, if we do the surgery now, we better do it now. If we wait any longer, we take a big risk that, we're going to have to do surgery anyway if this rehab continues to not work, and then he won't be ready for the start of the regular season. So it was just poor luck on both the 49ers part and on Garoppolo's part that the rehab didn't work out, at least according to the opinions of the doctors surrounding Garoppolo. The 49ers probably want him to hold out a little bit longer. They see if they could trade him and then have that whole shoulder recovery saga be the problem of another team. But I think Garoppolo's side was a little bit smarter than that. And they said, no, we want to have the surgery right now because we've got an injury guarantee in this contract for $7.5 million. We've given you, 4 good seasons of play. And now, you're just going to have to deal with it. We're going to have the surgery right now. It was not ideal for either party, but that was the best path forward for Jimmy Garoppolo at the time. So he announces on March 1st, or somebody through him announces on March 1st, that the surgery is going to happen. And at first, John Lynch remained optimistic, at least on the outside, that the 49ers would still be able to trade Jimmy Garoppolo in spite of the injury, in spite of the fact that he wouldn't be able to throw until July. That ended up being wishful thinking because, you look at the quarterback market, a lot of guys moved. The musical chairs seemed to shuffle around fast. It was just not practical, especially now with hindsight, to expect the team to go out and acquire a big contract, right? $26 million or $24.2 million in the base salary for this upcoming season. For a quarterback who wasn't able to throw the football, for a quarterback with an injury history who wasn't able to throw the football. Teams were rightfully hesitant. And that became apparent over the course of March, right? when all other quarterbacks were moving after Deshaun Watson moved and nothing happened with Jimmy Garoppolo. That became apparent over the course of March. So, I mean, it's nobody's fault in this situation. The rehab didn't take. Garoppolo underwent surgery because that was the best path forward for him. The 49ers, I mean, where were they supposed to trade him to if nobody wanted to trade for a quarterback that wasn't able to throw the football? The trade would have had to happen at some point in March, right before the start of that new league year, or maybe right after that. And that simply was not the case. He simply wasn't on the realistic table to be traded if teams were spooked by his inability to throw at the time. So now we fast forward to July. And the major, twist in March made the 49ers scramble a bit. They said, hey, well, we don't want to release Garoppolo outright because we'd owe him $7.5 million of injury guaranteed money. And on top of that, we think we could probably get something for him if the market for quarterbacks recalibrates itself when he's actually healthy. And the 49ers said, we can carry Garoppolo on the roster for quite some time without his money being guaranteed for the 2022 season. It won't become guaranteed until if and when he makes the 53-man roster, and that's not until August 30th. So they still have 7 weeks. 49ers have 7 weeks of runway. In the meantime, they're able to carry Garoppolo's contract through restructures for George Kittle and Eric Armstead. And I explained this all during the offseason. The salary cap's about to explode. Infusion of TV money, over $100 billion. It makes sense to push cap hits backwards. 49ers did just that with Kittle and Armstead. They have plenty of money to carry Garoppolo for now, not eat that injury guarantee. And even after he passes a physical, which should happen at some point soon, the 49ers can continue to carry Garoppolo to see if the Browns end up needing a quarterback after Deshaun Watson is suspended, to see if the Seahawks might get desperate as training camp nears its end, see if somebody gets arrested, see if somebody gets hurt around the league. It's all possible, right? And the 49ers have time right now to buy time. The pocket is not converging on them that quickly. Now, the next inflection point will come around that 53-man roster cut down. Maybe at that point, nothing materializes. Okay, fine. 49ers can release him. But I think they're still hoping, still maybe even banking on something opening up for Jimmy Garoppolo so that they can work on restructuring that contract, repackaging it for another team moving forward. So to me, it's a simple situation. Everybody likes to point fingers all the time, but there's no reason to point fingers when sometimes football happens, injuries happen, life happens. And that's what happened here. So it got pushed back a few months. Who cares? They don't owe him the money yet for the 2022 season, so they can still wait. I mean, you don't let go of the asset sooner rather than later just because somebody on Twitter wants you to let go of the asset at that time. So that is my take on the March Garoppolo surgery twist. We move on to April and Deebo's discontent. I'll answer a few questions here about Garoppolo after I drink some water. Let's see what you guys all want to ask. I don't see any questions. Yeah, I should have bought a snack and an alcoholic beverage for how long I'm going to be here talking about the 49ers offseason. Doesn't seem like there are too many questions about Jimmy. Nobody knows. Nobody knows what, he'll go for it. It all depends on what the market is at the time. So the 49ers can just sit back and wait and see what happens. There's no downside to it right now. It's not affecting their ability to pay Deebo and Bosa. It's, they have $5 million in cap space as it stands. They can restructure more people if they need to. They won't even need to sign Deebo and Bosa if they're going to backload in the standard way. So that's really all that I have to say about that situation. But yeah, should have gotten an alcoholic beverage. Didn't get it, but we're going to have to power through this show even without one. Why wouldn't Jimmy just want his release? Well, he might want his release, but the 49ers don't want that. Here's the thing. Teams can get desperate. Teams probably will get desperate at some point in training camp. And the 49ers still own the contractual rights to Jimmy Garoppolo. So, of course, Jimmy might want his release, but he signed a contract with the 49ers. He's under it until the team decides otherwise through the 2022 season is when that contract, when it's how long its lifespan goes. And the 49ers have a potential asset here. Not only for potential trade dangling, but you could also look at it as a deeper quarterback room for the time being, right? Why would you get thinner at quarterback, the most important position, until you're offered something that makes it worth getting thinner at that position? So Jimmy, yes, of course he might want his release right now because he wants to go be the guy somewhere else, but the 49ers would be dumb to just do that at the snap of a finger, right? So first you have to wait till he gets healthy, because once he gets healthy and that physical's passed, you don't owe him $7.5 million if you release him. And then maybe you consider it at the time because there might be some other roster machinations that you need to do. But I don't think it's, likely. I don't think it becomes a more realistic option until near that August 30th date, because something could happen across the league. The Browns could see Deshaun Watson suspended for a year or more. The Seahawks can decide that Drew Lock is not it. Somebody else could start needing a quarterback. Somebody else can get cold feet. I don't know. Pittsburgh, what are they doing? Mitchell Trubisky? Maybe that's what they're going to go for, but maybe they'll see in camp that that's not going to be the way forward. And, maybe you have a market start to develop. Maybe you have somebody want to throw out a mid-round pick, and then boom, you have a mid-round pick that you wouldn't have gotten if you would have just released Garoppolo a lot sooner. And plus, you would have had to pay $7.5 million. So it just makes sense for the 49ers to bide their time and wait in this situation. There's just no downside to it. It doesn't matter if the probability is small. It's better than zero, right? And if the probability is better than zero, then you wait. And that's what the 49ers are doing. All right, on to April. Deebo's discontent. So the Jimmy Garoppolo situation started to wind down. It wasn't in headlines every single day anymore. It wasn't something that people were freaking out over on Twitter after every quarterback was, had moved. Russell Wilson changed teams, obviously. Even Carson Wentz changed teams. Obviously, Baker Mayfield most recently changed teams. So that put Garoppolo back into some sort of news radar. But by April, when we're looking at the timeline of this offseason, stuff started to slow down surrounding Jimmy. And we thought, okay, maybe we'll have a quiet lead up to the draft if we're covering the 49ers. And then Deebo Samuel said, no, that's not happening. We're not having a quiet lead up to the draft. First, he purged his social media. Then his friend demanded $25 million in social media per year for a contract for Deebo Samuel. And then Deebo requested a trade, formally requested a trade that came on April 20th. So it was not quiet during April. And there was a whole lot of speculation, a lot of rumors between April 20th and the start of the draft on April 29th. So that 9 days was really, really hectic, really, really busy. In fact, the most dramatic night moment of the 49ers offseason came during the first round of the draft, and they didn't even have a pick because we were waiting to see what they would do with Deebo Samuel. But they did exactly what they said they would do with Deebo Samuel, and that is keep him. The 49ers were offered by other teams. I think the Jets offered something. Forgot who else offered something. But other teams offered assets in exchange for Deebo Samuel's services. The 49ers said, no way, not even close. You would have to give up a king's ransom to have Deebo Samuel because he's so important to us. When Deebo was on the field as both a receiver and a running back, so as a wide back last season, the 49ers offense on plays with him on the field was over 4x as efficient by EPA per play than on plays without Deebo on the field. He was the heartbeat of that offense, and the 49ers weren't dumb enough to just let him go for peanuts. They would have required a massive haul, and a massive haul they did not get. Now, symmetrically enough, A.J. Brown, same draft class as Deebo Samuel, same agent as Deebo Samuel, same kind of situation as Deebo Samuel, did get traded on draft night. He went from the Titans to the Eagles. He earned a contract worth $25 million per year, which is exactly the amount that Deebo Samuel's friend demanded and Deebo endorsed on Instagram. So it just shows you a tale of two receivers. Entering this offseason, we said that AJ and Deebo would be tied at the hip because Torrey Dandy represented both of them. Well, they were tied at the hip, but one went one direction and the other has stayed with the 49ers. Now, the 49ers decided to keep Deebo on draft night. We saw a cooling of relations between Deebo Samuel and the 49ers. Or I guess I should say a thawing of relations, let's put it that way. A cool down of the animosity that we had seen in April. We saw that after the draft, right? Because they weren't going to move him if they can get a first-round draft pick in return, plus much more. So Deebo's going to be with the 49ers, but that situation still isn't resolved. And that's what this reset is about. The final couple weeks here before the start of training camp, I think we got a soft deadline, maybe an inflection point coming up regarding Deebo Samuel and, a possible contract extension being signed, because Nick Bosa's in the same boat. And if you look at past behavior, the 49ers signed George Kittle and they signed Fred Warner before these deadlines hit. All right, so that was April. We're going to move on to May. Those of you just coming in, like the video, subscribe to the channel, you know the drill. And also, check out this article on The Athletic. We're going more in depth into 49ers football than anyone. So I will post that there. You guys can check it out. There it is. It's in the chat section. It's going to be in the comment section later. Today's article, from Garoppolo to Lance to Deebo Samuel, resetting the 49ers. Wild offseason. If you guys have any Deebo questions, by the way, I'm looking at the screen right now. Let me see. Let me see if you guys have. Well, why would Kyle and John trade Deebo? Exactly. They wouldn't. You wouldn't trade a guy that makes you 4x as efficient unless you got a haul of picks and players that made you more than 4x as efficient. You're trying to win a Super Bowl, right? You're not trying to take steps backwards. So in trading Deebo Samuel, you'd be taking steps backwards unless you made market gains in the process. See a Rams fan in here. Shout out to the Rams fan. The Ramelia Sports Report. It's a funny name. Here's a question. Let's answer the question from the Rams fan. Are you worried about this O-line with Mack retiring, Tomlinson gone, and an inexperienced QB playing behind that O-line? I mean, yeah. I mean, this is to me, I've written about this all off season as the biggest concern that far too few people are talking about. Obviously, the QB is a concern. It's going to be a first-time starter for the 49ers in all likelihood with Trey Lance. But you can only talk about that so much until you're blue in the face, right? The offensive line for the 49ers year in, year out has been an issue. Aaron Donald, speaking of the Rams, single-handedly just took over in the fourth quarter of the NFC Championship game. He took over the Super Bowl, too, against a subpar Bengals offensive line. Joe Burrow and Jimmy Garoppolo ended with almost exactly the same fate this past season, being tossed to the ground by Aaron Donald, making a desperation heave. Garoppolo's last pass actually was a pretty good one, considering the fact that it hit JaMychal Hasty in the hands, maybe the face mask, right, and bounced off and was intercepted. But what's he supposed to do with Aaron Donald throwing him to the ground? So the point is that when Aaron Donald and that Rams defense, and hell, there's other good pass rushers in the NFC West. There's pass rushers all around the league that are really good. If you want to win a Super Bowl, you have to be better along the offensive line than the 49ers have been in pass protection. And not only were they not good enough, I know Trent Williams was hurt playing on the high ankle sprain in the NFC title game, but point blank, they weren't good enough, right, up front in pass protection against the Rams to secure the NFC title. So not only were they not good enough, they also lost their most dependable guy at left guard in Laken Tomlinson as far as injuries go, and a really good center in Alex Mack. So how do they replace those two players? It is a big concern. They're going to try for Jake Brendel, journeyman kind of guy, but they really like his athleticism. And boy, at some point, if you do want to succeed in this football league, you have to see success through some of those draft picks that aren't the very premier guys. And Aaron Banks is a really high draft pick, is a second rounder, but he's not a premier draft pick. That is where the 49ers have to hit in this situation. They drafted Banks to take over at left guard after they couldn't play Tomlinson. Laken Tomlinson's now with the Jets. There's a lot of pressure on Aaron Banks moving into this 2022 season. So that was a good question from somebody who follows the Rams. Now we move to May. Big beginnings for the 49ers. So, you had Garoppolo trade surprise in March. You had Deebo's discontent in April. In May, you started to see this roster fill out. They signed guys during free agency. Then they drafted guys moving from April to May in NFL draft. And the result was this. We have a new 49ers 90-man depth chart. So I have prepared for you right now, and I can make this bigger. I can make this stretch across the entire screen. Now, that's great stuff. I don't even have to be in the screen. This is good. You could see this 49ers 90-man roster and depth chart. And I'm going to take the Google Doc link and put it into the chat section so you can even follow along there. So go ahead and check it out. The link is there. Hopefully I'll see a bunch of little icons popping up as people watching this live check it out. But anyway, yellow highlights mean that the 49ers either signed or re-signed a particular player this year. And this kind of greenish highlight that you see with Ty Davis-Price and Danny Gray, that means that the 49ers have picked up that player as a rookie. It's a rookie acquisition. So you can see the players who made their debuts in May for the 49ers on this depth chart. And I have a projection for the 53-man roster on the left side, and I have a projection for the 90-man roster on the right side. So let's go through it. On the left side, you've got Danny Gray, Ty Davis-Price. That's a big beginning, Ty Davis-Price, right? Running back for the 49ers, 220-pounder. Yeah, I think, big reason he's there is to take some receiver load off of Deebo Samuel. Big reason Danny Gray is there is so that the 49ers have a speed threat that they haven't necessarily had in previous years, because I'm not really counting Travis Benjamin. They drafted 2 offensive linemen who they hope make that 53-man roster right away, probably guards for them, maybe a center in Nick Zakel's case moving forward. But Spencer Burford is a really good prospect for the 49ers. That guard position, played tackle at UTSA, tossed around guys like a ragdoll. They used their most valuable draft pick, number 61, on Drake Jackson. And you'll notice I have Drake a little bit lower on the pecking order here because I feel he's got to earn his way in training camp. But he's ultra talented. I mean, he was a first-round pick in the eyes of many before having to switch positions due to injuries under an incompetent coaching staff at USC. So can Drake Jackson be the bookend for Nick Bosa? Because if he is, that 49ers defensive line might really, really be in business. And then Samuel Womack, they picked up the nickelback of the future. At least they hope he is, with that 4.4 speed, big wingspan, nice quickness out of Toledo. Of course, you got other guys, undrafted free agents, and we could talk about those in another video. I put up a ton of other videos about this, so go ahead and sub to the channel. Go and check that out. Don't want to make this one run all too long, but the 49ers stacked up on 22 new rookies during that first little weekend of May during the draft. 9 draftees, 9 draftees, 13 undrafted free agents. I think that adds up to 22. Yeah, it sure does. 13 plus 9. And it's going to be really interesting to see how they all slot in, who makes the roster. But May was the first time that we saw them on the practice field during OTAs. On to the free agents, because these guys also have moved on to plug very specific roles. All the offseason activity is highlighted in yellow. Maybe I should differentiate this page to give you guys a look at who are new signings and who are re-signings. But I'm going to talk about the headliner, Charvarius Ward. He's down here. He's the cornerback at the top of the 49ers depth chart. Charvarius Ward was the big money acquisition of the offseason for the 49ers. This is a guy who, if you look at his coverage metrics, he was near the top of the league in a lot of the advanced stats for the Kansas City Chiefs last year. He had a couple games that weren't quite as good, but to me, Charvarius Ward is a really high ceiling pickup for the 49ers. He's only been in the league here, 3 years? Undrafted guy too. Undrafted guy, Middle Tennessee State, that just is really, really fluid in coverage. And the 49ers immediately believe they have cornerback 1 on their roster. And they didn't have cornerback 1 for almost all of last season. Jason Verrett tore his ACL in week 1. And now if you look at this depth chart, Jason Verrett is on the injury projection list down here. They're not reliant on Jason Verrett to do anything for them this season. Last year they were reliant, and then when he got hurt, it was a complete disaster, right? They set records with the amount of pass interference penalties they committed. It was a complete and utter train wreck at the cornerback position. Well, this year it looks a lot better on paper because you got Charvarius Ward with his sticky coverage ability. You've got Emmanuel Mosley next to him. Darquez Dennard, he really showed up in the pinch against the Rams when he had to play that nickel position. You've got Ambry Thomas waiting in the wings. He played some decent football down the stretch for the 49ers last year, really improved. So the secondary's gotten a whole lot deeper for the 49ers, and the special teams unit has also gotten, I think, a lot better for the 49ers. New returner in Ray McLeod. New specialist in Oren Burks, who's a backup linebacker. And then George Odom is special teams all-pro, played for the Colts. He's going to be in there as well. Also a new coordinator. So I talk about big beginnings in May, and that's because we saw the 49ers for the first time with new special teams coordinator, Brian Schneider, working with players, all these new free agents. All, you know, it was a really targeted offseason. They really wanted to get specific guys for specific roles. Charvarius Ward being the headliner, then all those specialists being the guys that are supposed to really bolster a languishing unit of the team. May, to me, was interesting to see all that on the practice field. And it's going to be even more fascinating in 2 weeks to see all these guys come on to the training camp field, put on the pads, and see what this team really, really does look like. All right, so then we move to June. We're almost done. This has been a marathon because the offseason was a marathon. Key retirements and a return in June. So I take 2 key retirements. Everybody knows that Alex Mack retired. We could even pop open Alex Mack's picture on the screen. Why don't we do that right now? Here we go. Here's the article. And here is Alex Mack. There he is. They expected the retirement. He took a while to announce it. Took a while to finalize his decision. All good with the 49ers. It saved them cap room to do it after June 1st. The other retirement, though, wasn't a guy that played for the 49ers this past year. It was Frank Gore deciding to retire as a 49er. Frank Gore, 100% is going to be in the Hall of Fame on the first ballot. Don't listen to anybody who tells you otherwise. 16,000 career rushing yards in 16 seasons. He's top 3 all-time list rushing yards, right, for Frank Gore. Insane durability, recovered from 2 ACL tears before the NFL, just the complete stud, and he retired as a 49er in early June, and I knew that was a big deal for a lot of people. And then the key return in June was Deebo Samuel showing back up at the veteran minicamp and actually playing catch with Kyle Shanahan's son, Carter Shanahan. So, tell me of a contractual situation that's going so poorly, where the guy absolutely has no chance to play for you next year, but he shows up to practice and starts playing catch with the head coach's son. So, I mean, when I talk about a thawing of relations between Deebo Samuel and the 49ers, I mean, it was ice cold, right? In April, when he was deleting all the pictures from his Instagram and he was out clubbing in LA, and, everybody's like, he's never going to play for the 49ers again. Well, the 49ers called his bluff. He's back there playing catch with Kyle Shanahan's son. So I think that's going on a good path. Kyle Shanahan thinks the same thing. John Lynch thinks the same thing. And it's all set the table for July. And July is setting the table for 2022. It's going to be a whirlwind, and we're currently in the calm before the storm. In 2 weeks, we'll be back out at the 49ers facility. Maybe in 2 weeks, both Nick Bosa and Deebo Samuel will have resigned. We'll know a little bit more about the 49ers' thoughts and plans regarding Jimmy Garoppolo, although I outlined them in detail during this video. And of course, we'll be seeing Trey Lance on the practice field, and that's the biggest question of all. So that's what I got to write about today. I hope that you all get to check it out. In fact, maybe I could put that into the comment section one more time. I don't want to answer any more questions because I'm thirsty, tired. It's been a big day. So hopefully 47 minutes, going on 48 minutes is enough for you guys. Maybe this will last the 49 minutes, and then it'd be perfect because it's the 49ers offseason recap. You know what? Yeah, why don't we go one more minute? We're at 48:00. We'll call this the 49-minute 49ers offseason reset. We could even change the title after it's done. So I could spend here the last minute telling you to do this. Subscribe to The Athletic. You have that in the comment section, and obviously to the channel. We've been growing nice and steadily here throughout the offseason, and it's about to get really furious. We're going to have a lot of content coming up here as training camp approaches. So please do feel free to hit that subscribe button right now. Like the video, do whatever you need to. It's 49 minutes of 49ers offseason reset, and we've got about 20 seconds to go. So now I'm just hanging on. I'm buying time right now. I'm buying, just like the 49ers are buying time, just like Trey Lance are going to have to buy time behind what might be an unknown offensive line this year. Well, I think I'm doing a pretty good job because we're at 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. There you have it. 49 minutes of 49ers content to recap the offseason. Everybody take care. We'll talk to you all next time.